Hello everybody and welcome to another Doctor Who review. This time I'm reviewing a Fourth Doctor story. It's the Robots of Death. Since this is a classic series story, I have with me as always the television companion, and here is the plot synopsis for the Robots of Death. The TARDIS materialises on board a massive sandminer vehicle combing an alien world for precious minerals. The miner is run by a small human crew with the aid of numerous robots, split into three classes: Dumbs, Vox, and a single controlling Supervoc. The crew are currently being picked off one by an unseen killer. The Doctor and Leela immediately come under suspicion, but are able to convince two undercover government agents, Poole and his robot associate D-84, a Supervoc posing as a Dumb, that they are innocent. The real culprit is one of the human crew, Dask, who is in truth the scientist Taran Capel. Raised by robots, Capel regards them as superior to humans and has been reprogramming those on board with orders to kill the other members of the crew. He is tricked by the Doctor into outlining his plans for conquest, while a helium canister discharges itself into the room, and he is consequently killed by one of the robots as it can no longer recognise his voice. So, a Fourth Doctor story in his third season, season 14, starring Tom Baker as the Fourth Doctor, Louise Jameson as Leela, and it is written by Chris Boucher, the creator of Leela, who also wrote the story before, The Face of Evil, and directed by Michael E. Bryant. I will go through the characters and have a chat about some of the main cast and what I think of them and the dynamics. And I'll go through, as always, some of the good bits of the plot, some of the bad bits of the plot, the production values. We start with the Fourth Doctor, played by Tom Baker. The time of recording this, I'm recording it on his 91st birthday. So happy birthday, sir, even though he's not going to be seeing this anytime soon. And this review doesn't come out for a couple of months yet. However, I thought it was poignant to review a Fourth Doctor story. I haven't done one for about a year or so. Last one was the Zatara Experiment. So here we go. The Fourth Doctor is still in the kind of gothic horror stage at the moment in his era, because it's the tail end of the Hinchcliffe era. Robots of Death is an interesting story. It's sandwiched between The Face of Evil, which introduces Leela, and The Talons of Weng Chiang, which finishes the season. I quite like the way the Fourth Doctor is portrayed here. There's enough whimsy, the madness and the bohemian attitude of the Fourth Doctor here. It's really a nice little mix between them. The little quirks he has, when you think he's been drowned in the storage silo at the end of episode 1 and he has a snorkel that comes up to help him breathe. He's munching on jelly babies throughout the whole time. Little sweets. He offers jelly babies at one point to one of the crew, and they say "sharp," and the crewman knocks it out of his hand. These little comedic moments that Tom Baker's imbuing into the story are becoming more influential as time goes on, and the transition to a bit more of a light-hearted Fourth Doctor kind of starts to creep in here with the relationship he has with Leela. Beforehand, it was great friends having a lot of fun with him and Sarah, but Leela is a professor and a student teaching pairing, which happens a few times in Doctor Who, and probably the most prominent after this is the Seventh Doctor's relationship with Ace. But up to this point, it really is down to the Doctor and Leela, this Professor Higgins and Eliza Doolittle type of characterization, which is really nice. It's really nice to see, but it is an intriguing performance. Tom Baker, I don't think he's bored with the script. I think he likes the script and it's interesting to him, and he's playing it as him, as Tom Baker usually did. The darkness is still there. The kind of when he's serious, he has to be serious. He is serious. When he has to be childlike and a bit fun, he's a bit childlike and fun. It's interesting how that all comes out, and I quite like the way that Tom Baker portrays the Doctor here, and it's quite a nice little performance overall. I quite like it. We then have Louise Jameson playing Leela. Now, this is her second story, and Leela as a character was kind of defined in the first one as kind of a savage, but an intelligent savage. And this intelligence and this querying and questioning, not in a way of misunderstanding, but a way of trying to figure out what's going on, and that kind of innate intelligence that Leela has comes through in this story too. There is that childlike element when she goes into one of the crew cabins initially, and She's bouncing on the cushions, and her fight or flight responses that she has, that she naturally has, come through. But you can see the start of a very good relationship between the two main leads here, and I think they bounce off each other quite well. And Louise Jameson plays a gravitas performance that is kind of ignored through the costume that she wears. It's interesting how that controversial costume, because it was probably controversial even in the 70s, with the leotard and the skins that she wears, and the actual character herself. Leela's an interesting character to watch and look at, and I've always liked Leela because she always seems to have this innate intelligence and strength about her that belies her initial appearance and her roughness that she has, and it's a really endearing character, and the Doctor sees a lot of good in her, and I love the way that the interplay is between them throughout the story, and I think it's a great addition, and Louise Jameson really sells Leela for me, and it's a really great character, and I like the way that Leela's portrayed here. It's really nice. We'll then go to some of the guest cast. I'll go with the more important ones. So we have Ivanov, played by Russell Hunter. They make him out to be a very unlikable character, but actually there's a bit of softness underneath there. He's a very good salesman. He's very good at trying to get all the mining materials, and he's quite a high performer, but he has a very rude and acid tongue with him. And there is a kind of thing between him and Zilda, one of the miner crew, who is then killed later on. And that kind of frisson between them, because he's a bit of a class snob, but he's a lower class and she's a kind of higher class of person. It's intriguing how it all works out, and there's suspicion put around Ivanov for most of it that he's a bit untrusting and a bit of a nasty man, but he actually turns out to be a good man at the end of the day and actually wants to help. And once he realises his initial suppositions of the Doctor being the killer are confounded and taken on, and are resolved with the robots when finding out the robots are killing, he's actually a good little help to the Doctor near the end of the story, and actually I do warm to Ivanov throughout the story. I think it's really nice. Then we've got Pamela Salem, who plays Toos. Now Pamela Salem is probably better known in the Doctor Who world as playing in Remembrance of the Daleks in about 12 years later, but Pamela Salem plays a very nuanced performance as Toos. You can tell she's second in command. You can tell there is obviously a great relationship between her and Ivanov, and I love the way that there is that kind of slight naivety they all have of relying on the robots, but Toos is probably the most prominent of that situation, where Toos does not seem to be 100% intelligent emotionally for the fact that the robots could be killing, and actually relies them too heavily, and that's a betrayal of the culture of this crew, because robots have been made to help them and they can't think that anybody could kill them. It's an interesting way of putting it across. And I like the way that Pamela Salem puts herself across. She's really, she seems to be more on the side of believing the Doctor and Leela don't kill anybody when they are under suspicion. And I love the kind of balance that she has here. She's a bit frightened and temperamental when the robots try and strangle her, and I like the production point. They're trying to keep her red neck like she has been strangled later on in the story. I think that's quite a nice little touch to keep that kind of, she has been injured. And they do the same with Ivanov when he hits himself on the desk, when he has that little tussle pool in the middle of episode 2, and the injury he has in his head. There's quite nice little production values there, but the character too, so I think, is played quite well by Pamela Salem. There's a really likeable character, and there's a nice contrast to Ivanov's character for most of the story. We then have David Collins playing Poole, who turns out to be an undercover man, much as anything else, which is really intriguing. There's always something a bit strange about Poole, but then we find out he had good intentions and the D-84 robot is helping him. It's really nicely played. I love the fact that David Collins gets a chance to play a character who suffers a mental breakdown with the robophobia. I like the way that David Collins portrays Poole here. This is kind of gravitas that David Collins plays in Modern Undead, and it's here as well. And it's a very believable character he ends up playing here with Poole. And he's trying to find out stuff. He's one of the first people to know that Dr. Leela hasn't killed people. But when he realises the robots have killed it, it kind of drives him mad, and it's really sad to see. But it's interesting how that all works, and I love the way that David Collins plays it, and it's a lovely little role, and he's probably one of the more engaging ones here. We then have the big bad, which is David Bailey playing Dask, or Taran Capel as he is known at the end of the story. An interesting character. There's always something about Dask through it where he's kind of like, oh, I just accept what Ivanov says and I'm going to be with him, and it's like an older man who's maybe a bit weary of the whole situation, but actually undercover he's a mad scientist who's turned these robots to start killing people. And I think it's an interesting contrast that David Bailey plays very well. I think it's a nice little contrast between them all. And I do like the way that Dask changes into Taran Capel near the end and the real character comes out. And the fact that Taran gets his comeuppance with the voice changing with the helium late in the story actually is quite satisfying. One more character I think is interesting is Gregory DePaulnay's D84. An interesting robot. This undercover dumb robot, one of the classes that doesn't speak. It's stated in the plot synopsis as a supervoc, but I don't know if it is a supervoc or whether it's just a voc that takes commands. I think it's probably a supervoc. And I love the way that D84 is used here as prowling about undercover, and it's a really nice portrayal here. And both the robots, main robots, Miles Fothergill's SV7 are really good as well, and really nice performances. The humanoid appearance obviously is easy to then put a mask on top. Yeah, no, they're nice little nuanced performances as well. When it comes to the plot, I love the relationship the crew seem to have. There's enough niggly points here to raise suspicion about who could be the killer early on. Zilda's frisson and her dislike of Ivanov is lovely. I love the fact that some of the other minor characters like Cass and Borg have issues with Ivanov and the way he's projecting things in this story. I think it's really a nice way of building tension with them and help build suspicion about who it could be, this kind of murder mystery story. Chris Boucher does a good job here. It's a great writing, and I think it's needed to develop Leela to the stage where Leela can then be used more thoughtfully, because companions tend to have their first story and then they have a set way of doing things and they don't tend to develop. Because Chris Boucher wrote both The Face of Evil and the next story, which is the Robots of Death, Leela gets a better chance to have a character fleshed out, so there's more for future writers to work with, and I think it's really nice. This is Boucher's last appearance in Doctor Who, writing-wise, and it's an interesting writing story. It's a nice little whodunit on a space station, so it's kind of like a mix of the whodunit and Base Under Siege situation, which is really nice. Well, it's not a space station, it's a sandminer, but the premise is still the same. Lots of corridors and a control room, and a couple of little nice little comfort areas. There's a kind of refectory area all the crew relax in. And then they've got their own separate rooms, which is just the same room being redressed multiple times, but there's not much. I'm not going to comment too much on that. But yeah, it's an interesting writing style. I think the tension works well all the way through. It's quite good, the production values as well. It's obviously multi-camera. Michael E. Bryant's very good with these sort of stories, and he's very good with those sort of things. And Michael E. Bryant did a lot of John Pertwee alien type stories as well, when it's far future stuff, and he's great at doing them, and I think production values work here as well. I quite like the effect of the glowing eyes using a bit of blue screen, and obviously they've got a bit of reflective material, maybe a bit of blue screen or something that they superimpose stuff on, because it does bleed out at times on more reflective surfaces, but it works. I think it's quite a nice little effect, and I think it works quite well to give that kind of menace to the robots. I think the design of the robots are actually very nice. I think they're very unhuman and a bit unsettling. They seem to have a kind of friendly face, but there's something sinister underneath them when they get turned, and it's really nice to see it. And I do like the way it's been put across. I think it's really nice overall how it's all been set up, and I like the way that the story has been written. The music by Dudley Simpson is pretty static and pretty standard for the time. A little bit of mix of synths with the kind of organ thing that does the tension, but he's got his usual mini brass and acoustic band there with the horns and the percussion that he has for these stories at this point. It gives the tension. It's very much a very 70s flavour to Doctor Who at this point, and the music always helps that. And I think overall it's one of these great stories that you can watch. It's not take your brain out, you do need to concentrate a little bit, and it's actually one of the higher rated stories in most people's minds, and I can see why it is. One little thing about the little in-joke they had is about Grimraid syndrome. Now this is a joke in-joke from the production team, because Peter Grimwade was a production assistant on this and also apparently directed some of the filmic sequences as well. And Peter Grimwade would go on to direct and write Doctor Who in the Fifth Doctor's era. So it's interesting seeing Peter Grimwade come out here and have that Grimwade syndrome of what they call Grimwade syndrome, the official scientific name of robophobia. And it's an in-joke because Peter Grimwade was Grimwade syndrome, which is a scientific term of robophobia in this story. And Peter Grimwade kind of bemoaned that most of the stories he worked on Doctor Who had robots in them. So they kind of did an in-joke in it. And it works. It's quite fun. And I quite like that. Overall, I do like this story. I think it's one of the better Tom Baker stories. Some Tom Baker stories you kind of go, what are you talking about? Some of them are a bit meh in writing. We're still at the age where the writing quality is quite high. And even though it's not a 4.5 TARDIS out of 5 story, it definitely fits in quite comfortably into 4 TARDIS out of 5. Okay, let's see how that story stacks up with the rest of the Tom Baker era, and how that story stacks up with the rest of the TV stories I've reviewed as well. The Robots of Death sits in with the Horror of Fang Rock with 4 TARDISes out of 5. At the bottom of the Tom Baker era so far, 6 stories share 3 TARDISes out of 5. They are Warrior's Gate, The Reboss Operation, The Stones of Blood, The Power of Kroll, The Armageddon Factor, and The Sontaran Experiment. Overall, there are still 2 stories which have a rating of 2.5 TARDISes out of 5. They are, of course, Time Lash and Sleep No More. And there's still 7 stories at the top with 4.5 TARDISes out of 5. They are The Happiness Patrol, Inferno, The Day of the Doctor, The Caves of Androzani, The Tomb of the Cybermen, Dalek, and The End of Time. That's it from me. Thanks very much, guys, for watching this Doctor Who review. What do you think of the Robots of Death? Leave a comment down below. Do you like it? Leave a comment down below. Are you not so keen? Is my rating maybe overblown? Leave a comment down below. If you like this video, please like it. Share it with the hashtag teamstructor. If you like the channel as a whole, please hit that subscribe button and the notifications bell so you know when a new video comes out. General rule, new video every second Sunday at 4 PM GMT. And that's when the next video is in 2 weeks' time. And it's a review of Colditz, the big Finnish audio drama. Hopefully you can join me for that. But until next time, guys, thank you very much for watching. And you know what? I'll see you later.